Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the On-Screen podcast. I'm your host. My name is Tyson.
And I'm Will.
And today we are going to be talking about Comic-Con news, other news in general, a few things we've been watching, and some stuff that's coming up. So let's get started with On Tap. What we've been watching. What we've been playing. What's on Tap? This is our segment where we talk about what we've been watching or playing or anything recently. I'll kick things off. I've been watching Never Have I Ever, which is a Netflix comedy series, like a teen comedy series, but it's from Mindy Kaling from The Office and the Mindy Project. Yeah, it's about like a high school girl who's like an Indian girl. And what's interesting about this show is that it's narrated kind of similarly to the way like Arrested Development is, but then the narrators are like weird. Like, so every time it'll go to a different character, which it's only happened like twice now. It's the main character and one other character, but I'm assuming they're going to do more of this, but each character kind of has their own narrator and it's based on some like kind of random thing related to them. Like the main character gets kind of angry a lot. So her narrator is John McEnroe, the tennis player who's famous for like throwing temper tantrums and stuff on the tennis court, like back in the 90s.
Sure.
And so her father said that it was his favorite tennis player and compared her to him. So the narrator for all of her perspective, like going through what she's doing, is literally John McEnroe as John McEnroe.
Oh.
Like talking about like comparing things to his tennis games and stuff, and like saying like, she'll have like a very like female experience or something, and he'll be like, I don't even know what this is about, or something. Like he'll be like confused, and
right.
It's just kind of really funny the way they did that. And then later on, they had another character where they had the episode focused on him, and when they did, his narrator was I can't believe it just slipped my mind. Lonely Island.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
And Andy Samberg. So he was the narrator for like that guy's episode. And the reason he was narrating for him was because that character's father's like a lawyer, and he like said like he owed the father like a favor. And so because of that, he's narrating for the kid or whatever.
This is such a strange gimmick, but
yeah,
it's interesting.
It's really funny though. And the teen show in general, it's a good, funny kind of teen show. There's a few things that are kind of weird and unrealistic about it and stuff. It's not like, it doesn't get into the stupid CW style teen drama stuff that's really ridiculous and dumb. It's usually played for comedy. Like if there's drama, it's usually played for comedy.
Huh. Okay.
Like something will happen that's dramatic, but it'll happen for the sake of comedy versus for the sake of tension or something.
Okay. That sounds pretty neat, actually.
Yeah. So it's a pretty good show. I'd heard some people recommending it. My sister was recommending it, but Never Have I Ever was one that I decided to check out because I needed, I'm always on the lookout for new comedies. So
right.
I checked that out and I've been kind of enjoying it. So that was pretty good. You watched something else recently.
Yeah. I just finished Masters of Universe Revelation, which we're probably going to have to talk about more in depth after the first season finishes. If I'm thinking correctly, it's 10 episodes. Netflix only released the first 5 this past Friday because they're doing the whole annoying Netflix thing where they're trying to stretch things out.
So they're splitting the season into 2 chunks.
Yeah, they're splitting the season into 2 chunks. So they released the first 5 episodes this past Friday. I watched the first 5 episodes. I gotta say it's excellent. And full disclosure up front, I was a big He-Man fan when I was a little kid. I had like all the action figures. I watched the cartoon. I watched the movie and I hated it. Even at that age, it was stupid.
Dolph didn't do it for you?
No. I don't even know like when that stupid movie came out. I was like 6 or 7. I remember like watching it and just thinking, what the hell is this? That aside, I don't have like a lot of nostalgia for the cartoon. I stopped watching it like when I was a kid. I haven't watched any He-Man cartoons since. I can't even I remember the characters, and I think largely because of the action figures. Like, there are some characters that show up in this that I definitely remember only because I had that action figure. I was like, oh shit, yeah, it's that guy. I had that guy. I can't really remember any of the plots of the original cartoons other than He-Man became He-Man and fought Skeletor.
I think that pretty much was the plot.
It was. Anything more specific than that is I don't know. So I wouldn't call myself a super fan, I haven't been obsessing over the franchise for these past 40 years. It was just it's one of those things that you enjoy when you're a kid and you get older and you're kind of yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, the original cartoon honestly was not that great. It was very cheap. It was Filmation, and it was very cheap animation. And they did it as cheaply as they possibly could. So
didn't they do Thundercats too, and that was better animation and everything?
They might have. I don't know. I'd have to look up if Thundercats was also Filmation, but I know He-Man was, and the animation quality was abysmal, to say the least.
Yeah, worse than Invincible.
Worse than Invincible for sure. Try go watching the original He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and yeah, it's worse than Invincible. And the showrunner of the show, through a loophole, did all the voices. Because back then, with how voice acting worked, you can pay an actor to do up to 4 voices. But any voice work after 4, and you'd have to pay them more money.
Some kind of an actors union rule, probably.
Yeah, it was a rule. You'd have to pay them more money to do more than 4 voices. And it was fine when the show started, but as they kept introducing characters, again, Mattel's got this toy line, they're kind of crank out characters, we need some more toys. We need to keep that going. As the cast got much, much larger, they didn't have the money to just hire more actors to do more voice work. They had to stick with the cast they had. So what happened instead was the showrunner, the founder of Filmation the owner of Filmation just did the extra voice work himself and just didn't pay himself for it. The way he set up was he did the male voices and didn't pay himself, and then his daughter, uncredited and under an alias, and he was under an alias, she did the female voice work, also unpaid. That was the operation. But this one's really good. It's got an all-star voice cast. Chris Wood, who was on Supergirl. He's the voice of Prince Adam, He-Man. You got Sarah Michelle Gellar. She's the voice of Teela. Lena Headey, Game of Thrones, Cersei. She does the voice for Evil Lyn. Very appropriate for Evil Lyn. Alan Oppenheimer, who was the voice of Skeletor in the original series. He's Mossman in this. Mark Hamill is the voice of Skeletor in this. Kevin Conroy, Batman, is Merman. A lot of big, well-known names. Tony Todd, Scareglow. Henry Rollins I got for Triclops. It's crazy. So, I mean, it's a pretty stacked voice cast, just like Invincible was, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really fun 5 episodes, but there's controversy because of the first episode, where they do something, unexpected. They try to flip things on their head to make it a little bit more interesting, and a lot of people on the internet got really upset.
People were claiming bait and switch, which is a term that's basically being used to hide their own misogyny and shit.
Bait and switch. The best way I could describe it without spoilers, but still gonna be spoilers. It seems again, I'm gonna stress this, seems like Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, where Hideo Kojima, Konami advertised the game as starring Solid Snake and playing as Solid Snake to the point they built an entire first level of the game where you play as Solid Snake, and all the press previews, all the pre-release trailers, the pre-release demo are all focused on that one level of the game. And then when the retail game comes out, you play through that first level as Solid Snake, and then as soon as that ends, you're a brand new character that nobody has talked about for the rest of the game.
Yeah. Which I think, to me, when people do that, like, people freak out about that. They go like, oh, you lied to us, you manipulated. Oh. It's like, but the surprise of that moment is supposed to have an impact. Right. So if you advertise that surprise, you're stealing that impact.
Right, exactly.
So it's kind of a delicate thing to balance. It's not them lying to manipulate you. It's not like as if they couldn't just give you what you wanted. They could. It's like, it's not like, oh, they failed to give you what they wanted. No, they didn't fail to do it. They chose to do something different in order to make something more interesting. And the side effect of that is that you're gonna, get some people who don't like change or who have like their own agenda, which I think is the majority of the cases for the one we're talking about, that they want to inject into this series. They want to use this series as a like leapfrog for their own agenda. And they probably heard about it afterwards and then jumped on it and never even were watching it in the first place. I'm
convinced a lot of these people are just bad faith characters just using this as more ammunition.
That's what happened with Gamergate.
Yeah, as more ammunition for their shitty culture war that they want to wage on the internet. Gotta keep that grift going, gotta get those YouTube clicks.
Yeah, and it's the exact same thing that happened with Gamergate, where it's like, there were some legitimate discussions about kind of the cross breeding of like video game journalism and video game makers. Where
I don't know about that.
There was, but it was way before Gamergate. Like the stuff that really kicked Gamergate off wasn't, but I'm saying way before Gamergate, there was a concern that like so many people were crossing industries between the two. It's like an incestuous relationship between the journalism and the actual thing. And that's problematic and that causes issues. And so people had been for years before Gamergate propped up, were like pointing out that this was like a troubling thing, that the industries were tied this way. And like, it just seemed unnatural. Like, there were other issues too, which is stuff that's still brought up unrelated to Gamergate, like things like video game journalists that don't beat a game and then review it.
Gamergate was about like what you're talking about there, like Gamergate was about using that as an excuse or cover to kind of like just go on a rampant misogyny crusade.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. That's why I'm comparing it to this.
Right.
Is because I'm saying that like the root of Gamergate.
When people get confronted about it, they default to that. They're like, well, it's about honesty in games journalism or fuck ever.
But my whole point is that this, before Gamergate started, all of those separate things that we're talking about with game journalism were being talked about. It was something that had been coming up, and then people stepped on top of that as a platform for their own agenda, and that's how Gamersgate happened. Right. And that's why I'm comparing it to this. What I'm saying is that there were probably a small number of people that hate change, and they were fans of Master Universe, and they want it to be exactly as they remember it. They want to fit into their exact nostalgia, and they got upset, and then they notified people that probably would have never watched this to begin with, but have like a misogynistic agenda.
Yeah.
And then those people got involved, pretended like they were fans or that they were representing the fans of the series, and used it, as you said, as just ammunition for their own culture war, for their own clicks. That's why I was comparing the two. The same thing basically happened,
And having watched all 5 episodes now, I could definitely say it's nothing like these people want to portray it.
Well, those people haven't even watched it, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, I know. But it's an excellent show. I think if you're a fan of He-Man or Masters of the Universe, you will love it. I was skeptical going in, honestly, because of some of the negativity. Like, I admit, I let it get to me at first.
Mm-hmm.
But, once I finished it, I was like, no, this is dope. I don't know what the hell, I don't know, man. If you like good, action, adventure, animation, even if you've never seen He-Man, if you're like a nerd and you're a fan of like Marvel stuff and, that action, adventure, fantasy, science fiction, I'd say give it a try. You don't have to be an old school He-Man fan. It probably helps to you'll recognize the characters, but this is another thing that's also good is this really is, they give you a quick introduction at the beginning of the first episode to like what the entire series was about leading up into this. Like a quick refresher. It's not complicated. They sum it up in a minute. It's not complex. I think like people can enjoy this even if they weren't fans of the original show.
Yeah. I'm just not interested. It has nothing to do with the controversy. I'm just not interested.
Right.
And I watched He-Man when I was a kid. I have like no nostalgia for it though. It doesn't affect me. And like this
I get
project
nostalgia, like,
me.
I get nostalgia every time I like nostalgic when I see the toys.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really have like a strong nostalgia for the show itself.
I mean, I have some nostalgia for like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I have like a tiny bit of nostalgia for like Thundercats, you know?
The Turtles like all day, every day.
Yeah, I
can do that. I don't watch the new Turtles cartoons, so I don't.
I had nostalgia for Voltron, and then I happened across one of the old episodes when I was in my 30s, and I was like, wow, this is garbage. I don't know why I liked it. It was just because it was connecting robots, I guess, like the toys, you know?
But it's anime. It's supposed to be superior to all animation.
I'm sure the dub was just a nightmare anyways. You know?
I know. Yeah.
But it's just, it wasn't good. Like, it was in my head canon, it was amazing, and then I saw it again and was like, okay, yeah, this is garbage.
Yeah, I actually haven't seen Voltron since I was real freaking. Voltron was actually the first like thing I ever got into, like before He-Man. Like Voltron was my thing, and I was so young back then. I don't remember much about it outside of like the robot, the lions, the pilots.
Yeah.
I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. I have this idea in my head that's still the coolest thing ever, but I haven't seen it.
Just don't go back and watch it. Like I said, I had nostalgia for Voltron, then I saw it, now I don't anymore. It completely killed it. Like, it just killed it in my head. But,
the funny thing is, when you think about it, it's like very similar to Power Rangers with the pilots and like the robots that connect to like a bigger robot fighting evil.
Yeah, it's bad. The animation's bad. It's all like, just don't go back to it. Like, leave it in your head.
Okay, I'll leave it in my head. I'll take your advice.
All right. So next segment is On the Horizon. On the horizon. This is where we talk about stuff that's coming up, and we have two things. So I'm going to start out with something that came out today, and that's the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster series.
Yes. Square doing total justice to its flagship franchise, just treating it right with all the respect it deserves.
I just don't get what the problem is that they've created the solution for. It baffles me. Like, to me, there isn't a problem to be solved.
Right. I don't think the original sprites are bad. I don't.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing.
You get the theoretical issue, but but in practice, it's not.
Here's the thing. Because you're thinking about the wrong thing as the original problem. The original problem is Square decided they were going to update the 8 and 16-bit Final Fantasies on mobile originally, and then later on PC. They were going to update them with like these semi like remakes, and what they ended up doing was they ended up drawing completely new sprites. I don't think they touched the backgrounds, but they
didn't draw them. They pixel smeared them. They smeared Vaseline over. They drew in the pixels and then smeared Vaseline all over.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know, but like the end result was really ugly, and everybody pointed that out at the time that it looked really bad. And there have been fan mods that like to fix those on PC at least, because PC is really easy to do that stuff to fix those over time. But Square has like never really, I guess, like acknowledged or commented on it. And then like years later, they announced the Pixel remasters. And I guess this is Square's like attempt to actually go back and fix those, because people noted also that the original mobile and PC versions of these games have been delisted in favor of the new versions. So these are meant to replace those.
The thing is they don't really look that much better.
Yeah.
It's basically like they took those versions and then added a hard pixel outline around the characters.
Yeah.
That's basically what they did.
I'm not going to be as harsh as you do. I do think the artwork in the Pixel remasters is a notable improvement from those. It's still just nowhere as good as the original.
Yeah, it's a step down from the original. Like, I don't know why they're so stuck on making use of what they bought with the first reimagining, or the first, not reimagining, remaster. Like, they paid to do certain things on that remaster, and they're still trying to save those new assets by, like, adjusting those, and it's like, the answer is to dump those. Like, they didn't work. Don't try to make them work for a second go around, you know? They don't. And that's what's frustrating about these Pixel remasters, is because it's, I was saying it to you before we started the podcast. It's like you got a giant steak on your plate and you have a knife and a fork on each side of your plate to cut that. And you look up at the person across from you at the table, and they've gone out of their way to find a pair of chopsticks, and they're trying to cut the steak with dull-ended chopsticks. And it makes no sense. It's like, maybe if you cut it up, then you could pick up the pieces with the chop, but you can't cut it with like two little pieces. That doesn't work, you know? And it's like you're watching them and you're getting ever more frustrated because you're like, what are you doing? This makes no sense. This isn't how you cut meat. Like, you're trying to reinvent the wheel by putting something that's square in its place. Yeah, like, it doesn't work.
I think I get what they're doing, because I think in like Square's logic with this is like, and I think the logic the entire time is like, the original pixel art was not designed for modern displays. So they're trying to make something that is designed to look better on a modern display.
That's all theoretical though, because you can play the old games like emulated and stuff on a new display and they look fine.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. It's like, it's a theoretical problem. It's not even a real problem.
I think they look fine. There's probably people that disagree, probably because, you know, like, yeah, it's a whole debatable thing where you can go into it, the very technicalities of it, because I know, like, I love the sharp pixel look of like upscaled SNES graphics, like upscaled like NES graphics. I love those sharp pixels. They look fantastic to me. I know other people hate them, and I know like there are people, they want that blurriness that you get from a CRT.
But and that would have been another solution, but what they're doing is neither.
Right.
And what's so frustrating about this is like, Square's not like in a unique position. Like, their Final Fantasy games that they make are not the only games that face this theoretical problem.
No,
every sprite-based game from those eras face that same issue.
And I point out, like, Square even themselves, like, they made like Collection of Mana, which is like Game Boy and Super NES games on the Switch, and they didn't feel the need to create brand new sprites for those.
Yeah, and they look great.
Yeah, and they look great. So I don't know. I don't know.
They did another, I think it was one of the like, Saga games where they completely remade the graphics. Yeah. And it's in the spirit of the original, but it's completely redrawn. But it's not this like weird Vaseline smear bullshit either.
Yeah, they did that, the Secret of Mana remake.
No, I'm talking about one of the Saga games where they've completely redone them.
Oh, okay. The Secret of Mana remake looks bad too, but I
that's
think
a 3D game.
Circling back to that though, to the Mana collection on Switch though, is I think, because I point out like Final Fantasy is Square's premier franchise. It's their biggest franchise. You know, it's the one that does the best for them in all territories.
Then they could have done what they did with the Saga games.
And so I'm thinking in Square's mind, it's like, well, you know, sure, we could put the Mana games on Switch and not touch anything, but this is Final Fantasy. We have to give it like a premium. We have to give it like a regal royal treatment. So we do have to go in and change the sprites.
Here's the problem though, is there's a difference. The Secret of Mana games and the Saga games are different games. So I think you're when I'm talking about the Saga games.
I honestly do not care about that, because like the point is neither of those are premier franchises for Square.
No, but let me point out where I was going with that, because I don't think you got where I was going with that. And that's that they took one of those Saga games and they completely redrew all of the graphics for it.
I I can't.
Saga games are small time, or very small time compared to Final Fantasy.
Oh, yeah.
But they put in all the work to completely redraw every single asset for that game. So it works. This isn't a remaster. This is a complete remake.
Well, I'll tell you the secret there. I'll tell you why that is. That's Kawazu. He has like a senior role in Square Enix now, to where he and that series is like literally his baby. So he could do that stuff and get away with it.
But my point is, if they're going to do that for Saga, so this is, and again, this isn't Secret of Mana. This is Saga I'm talking about. A completely different series. If they're going to do that for Saga, and then the argument is that Final Fantasy is their premier one, so they have to do more than just like a pixel or just a typical upscale like they did for Secret of Mana. Then Saga's the answer. What they did with Saga is the answer.
Yeah, but they don't think like that. They don't think like, because like the rest of only Kawazu cares about Saga. The rest of Square doesn't give a shit about that franchise.
Yeah, but they secured the budget for that, and that they couldn't do the same, that they've basically done Final Fantasy wrong twice in a row now. They screwed it up so badly that they had to fix their screw up, and their fix is still screwed up.
Yeah.
They should have just did what they did with for Saga, like you do one or the other. They should have just done like a Final Fantasy or done like a Secret of Mana style thing, where they just use the original pixels, or you do what you did with Saga, with that one Saga game, and you just completely remake it.
I think there's the crux of the issue right there, because the way Square operates is so disjointed that, like one side of it isn't looking at the other side and taking notes.
But that doesn't excuse
doing their own thing.
Doesn't excuse their complete incompetence.
No, I'm not, and I'm not saying anything does.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to kind of spitball ideas and to try and like come to like an idea of like a rational reason like this would end up this way.
There is none. There is no rational reason for it to be this way. They should have just released the original build.
The most egregious part of it anyway is the fact that the fonts are atrocious and unreadable. They're tiny, they're thin. People are saying like, especially on a phone, it's impossible to read anything during
you're gonna get like a migraine trying to play the game.
Yeah. I don't know how, like, sprites aside, I don't know how they released it with those fonts, I don't know how they did that. They looked at that and said, this is fine.
Somebody at Square Enix put their nephew in charge of this.
Yeah, apparently.
Let's move on from Final Fantasy, which came out today, and let's talk about something that's coming out this Friday on July 30th, The Green Knight. So I don't.
That looks good.
You know too much about this, do you?
I watched the trailer. It looks excellent.
So the cool thing about The Green Knight is if you talk to anybody that's seen quite a few of the Arthurian legend adaptations, and you ask like, what's the best Arthurian legend adaptation? Almost everyone's going to say Excalibur.
Yeah, well, that's the one.
In the 80s. It was highly stylistic. It was kind of surreal. It was weird. It was wonderfully weird. This looks like kind of almost like a return to that.
I don't get into like the whole Arthurian legend just because like it's always the stuff about Merlin and the Knights of the Round Table and the Lady in the Lake and the Shimmering Sword. I never even heard about the freaking Green Knight until this, and I'm like,
one of the Knights of the Round Table, or not the Green Knight, but Gawain is.
Yeah, Gawain. Yeah, but like this is a new story to me. Like this is like okay, and I'm intrigued. Like the trailer looks excellent. I'm like, okay, this is great. This isn't just like the stuff they've been peddling since I was a kid. This feels fresh and exciting, and yeah, I'm down for it.
And that's the thing, is like all the Knights of the Round Table have their own stories.
Yeah.
Gawain's one of the more interesting ones, besides like the main ones that you talk about, Arthur and Guinevere and Lancelot and the love triangle and Merlin and all that's the stuff that we're very well versed in. Besides that, which is kind of like the core myth, Gawain's probably the most interesting. What would be really cool though is if this spawned if this became successful and they said, let's do more Arthurian legend this way, where we just focus on like one character and kind of follow their story and kind of and do it in a different way, because that's one of the coolest things about the Green Knight. If you watch like the trailer, is it looks weird, it looks surreal,
it does,
it looks stylistic, in a way that like the modern Arthurian legend stuff that we've seen
visually
not been, you know?
Visually, it looks arresting, you know, like.
Exactly.
It looks very much like dark fantasy.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of, like, the stuff like Guy Ritchie did one.
Yeah. Arthur, he did,
yeah,
it was just called King Arthur, I think.
It was supposed to be, like, realistic, like, oh, this is a true story. I thought those were dopey. I don't want realistic King Arthur stories.
Well, that's the thing. It's like Arthurian legend is mythology. It's like if you were to do a story about Zeus and you were trying to make it realistic.
You're like, oh, here's a guy named Zeus. People mistook him for a god.
Yeah, it's like, that's stupid. It's like, that's not what it is. It's mythology. Yeah. Like, so you need to play to the strengths of that, you know? And that's why, like, the best Arthurian adaptation so far has been Excalibur, because it was weird. It had like that shiny armor that looked unrealistic. It was surreal. It was dark. There was a lot of like metaphors and stuff going on. There's a lot of, it was just interesting, you know, like it was different. Yeah. And that's what this kind of reminds me of, in the sense, like, I mean, it doesn't have the same style. It's not surreal in the same ways that Excalibur is surreal, but it is stylistic. It is surreal. It is like, has a real kind of presentation of like magic and stuff being like an actual thing in the world, rather than, like, as you said with the Guy Ritchie thing, it's not realism, you know? Yeah. That's what makes this look good.
Yeah, exactly. I'm excited for it. Yeah, like that's one I'd be happy to watch.
Definitely. I'm excited for this. This is what I'm going to be watching.
If it lives up to the trailers, then yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that brings us to our next segment, On Beat. On Beat is where we talk about news stories. This time we kind of got to focus because our On Beat section's kind of large this time. We're going to kind of get through it as quickly as we can, though, because there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we're going to try to like rapid fire like the stuff.
But the reason there's so much news right now is because Comic-Con happened this last week.
Yeah, and Comic-Con at home.
Yeah, which meant I was originally going to do it. We were only going to be talking about Comic-Con stuff during this, but there really wasn't that much Comic-Con news.
No.
There was enough that this is a big segment, but there's not enough for it to be its own podcast.
Yeah, like a lot of things like Marvel didn't do anything for Comic-Con.
Guess that's probably going to be what, the D20, what do they call their thing? D something?
Yeah.
They have like a conference.
Yeah, D20. Even like DC didn't have, like, Warner Bros. They have like a lot of announcements for DC stuff.
Yeah.
So there wasn't like these huge like blowout announcements that Comic-Con was like known for in the past.
Yeah.
So it's mostly smaller stuff.
There were a few vague announcements and then trailers for stuff that we've already had trailers for.
Yeah.
And then so there wasn't a lot. So we're going to go over some of that right now. Let's start off with Chucky. They released a trailer for the new Chucky TV series.
Yes. This is by Don Mancini, who is the creator of the Chucky franchise and has been the writer on all the movies and directed, I believe the last 4 films he directed. And this is the continuation of the film series. This has nothing to do with the remake that Universal Pictures did recently. This is the original version of the character, continuing the original story from the films. The setup for this seems to be from the trailer. The setup is like Chucky is found in like this small town, and basically he attaches himself to this teenager and, goes on to like terrorize this town,
What's interesting is that because it's a TV series, the way that they're kind of making that work as an adaptation is that they're developing more on the relationship between Chucky and this teenager that he's latched himself onto.
Yes.
Rather than before, it was just the kid was just a means of bringing the doll home, basically.
Right.
And then horror ensued, and then the kid had to be involved in stopping it. But this is more like they're actually developing the relationship between these two characters.
Yeah, they're developing the relationship. Don Mancini, I read an interview, Don Mancini said the great thing about doing a TV series where you have like 8 hours, because apparently this is going to be like 8 episodes for the first season. He said what the great thing about having like 8 hours to do a story versus like 2 hours with a film is that they really get to spend more time with characters and flesh out characters more and get more dramatic moments with characters where they really can't do that in a film because, you know, you gotta get through it, you know.
One of the main things is that they really seem to be playing on the fact that Chucky isn't just straight up evil incarnate, like kind of is, but like in the sense that he kind of has sympathy for certain other characters and stuff. Like the main boy character they show in the trailer, like this teenager, he's getting relentlessly bullied, and Chucky's kind of like doing like a fucked up version of the trope of like, you know, the Miyagi Karate Kid trope of like the person that teaches you to stand up for yourself. Right. Kind of thing, but like a really fucked up version of that. And like, there's also
Chucky's in like the trailer. Chucky's like, why don't you just like flat out kill these motherfuckers? Yeah. You know, yeah.
Plus there's like a little girl that they show in the trailer who's got kind of like an older sister and they do this thing where Chucky's like talking to the little girl, like she's like she's trying to go to bed, and he's like, I'm gonna go next door and kill your sister, you want to come? And she's like, I'm tired. He's like, well, you snooze you lose, or something.
Yeah. And it's interesting, Don Mancini promises that we're gonna get like more into like the origin of Chucky. Like there are flashbacks that show Charles Lee Ray as a child and stuff. And he said, look, also there will be characters from the films coming back for this too. Like Tiffany and Andy from the original films will be coming back. So yeah, he promises it. He says it's going to be a lot of fun for Chucky fans.
It definitely looks more interesting than movies had been going for a while, so.
Oh yeah. Although I think like, because like I tapped out with Bride of Chucky. I thought Bride and Chucky, and especially Seed of Chucky, were completely stupid. But then, like, Curse of Chucky actually, like, took it back to, like, the original format. I thought that was really good. And
I just think, like, the movie format for that character has been so played out now that I'm excited to see it in a different format with TV.
Well, yeah, that's what Don Mancini was, like, saying. Like, the reason he made Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky the way that he did was because he felt by Child's Play 3, the original format of the films was like so played out. Exactly. They just have to do something completely different.
Yeah. So our next show that we got a trailer for was Dexter New Blood. This is the continuation of Showtime's Dexter. Dexter, I think I kind of know your opinion on. I think we've talked about it before. Is a show that started out good. Had 2 really good seasons. Seasons 1 and 4 were really good.
Yeah.
And then it had a few okay seasons.
Season 2 is also
Season 2 is all right. It's not as good as season 1.
I like that season 2, like they play it, like they make Dexter more the villain in season 2. You know, they kind of like flip it on its head, for that. They don't ever really do that again in the series.
I don't think they really were able to pay it off though, because it was too early for them to do that, I think.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
That should have been like a season 5 thing or something, and then they should have ended it.
Yeah, they should have ended it there. They did it. But yeah, season 4 was amazing. And then season 5 was like, they got a new showrunner. You know who it is. He also did Iron Fist.
Well, they did it. They had a few showrunners. It ended up ending with the Iron Fist showrunner.
Yeah, it ended up ending with him.
Scott Buck?
Scott Buck. And it was terrible.
Yeah.
And this is New Blood is bringing back the original showrunner for the first 4 seasons. And he's saying like, this isn't Dexter season 9. This is like the ending Dexter should have gotten. Basically, they're promoting it as this is the way Dexter should have ended.
Yeah. So because he's involved, I'm kind of split on how I feel about this. Because on one hand, he was involved when Dexter was better. On the other hand, after he left after season 4, he described what his ending would have been for Dexter, and I hated it.
Oh, okay. Well, don't say it.
I won't say it, but it's better than what we got with Dexter season 8. But it's still like, it just felt kind of trite to me. Like it didn't work.
Another thing that's promising is Michael C. Hall did come back for this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been known that Showtime has for a while been trying to get Michael C. Hall to come back for a Dexter project.
I remember when Dexter was ending, when season 8 was about to air, before it even aired.
Yeah.
They said, now that Dexter's going to end, but we're not ruling off the possibility of spin-offs so long as Dexter's involved. As long as Michael C. Hall's involved. I'm like, then it's not a spin-off. It's just...
Yeah, it's not a spin-off. Yeah, they wanted to do a air quotes spin-off with Michael C. Hall since season 8 ended. But
Michael C. Hall will be the lead. It's like...
Yeah. Yeah, I know, right? They've been trying to do that, and Michael C. Hall has always said, like, in interviews that he turned them down. Mm-hmm. And that's why the reason it hasn't happened is because Michael C. Hall kept turning Showtime down. He said so in interviews that they just never gave him a script that he was happy with. And so with this, I was reading like I was watching the videos and stuff, and Michael C. Hall talking with the original showrunner, they came up with the script together, and they said they came up together with a script that they were both happy with and they were moving forward with. And I think Showtime just basically said, oh, thank God we're doing this. Let's greenlight it.
Yeah. And the trailer came out. I like the trailer.
Yeah.
I kind of hope that they stick with the concept that he's not killing people in every episode. That he's kind of like somehow moved past that and is struggling with having moved.
Yeah. I really hope that they're doing that. Like I like the idea of a Dexter that's trying to go, straight, trying to go cold turkey with like the whole killing thing.
Yeah, and you got to tease him back out to killing again.
And you got to tease
right into it.
Right, exactly. And it looks like, and from the recent trailer, the Comic-Con trailer, it kind of looks like some people like in government or whatever, like they kind of like find him out, and so it shows like these people like Dexter running, and you see like quick shots like people with like sniper rifles and shit, and so it's kind of like the idea of like, has Dexter been found out? Is he exposed now?
Mm-hmm.
And so that could be really interesting. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen any, even with the latest trailer, they don't show a lot, so like there's still a lot that's questionable. We know like Dexter's sister is coming back for this, even though the character is dead.
I think she's probably going to be like his new Harry.
That's what I'm thinking too. We know John Lithgow filmed some new scenes as the Trinity Killer, but that's been confirmed to be
a flashback or a dream or something.
Yeah. But that's all we know at this point.
I'm kind of cautiously optimistic, I guess.
That's where I am too. I will say this. I like what I've seen. I like what I've heard. Proof is in the pudding, though. I still have to watch it to be convinced.
All right. So our next show we have up here is Blade Runner Black Lotus. This is an animated series coming to Adult Swim and Crunchyroll.
Nice.
It's between the two Blade Runner movies, basically. It takes place between them.
I don't know much
different
about
characters. That. And I don't know too terribly much about it too. It's Blade Runner, so it's going to be a cyberpunk adventure.
Yeah, absolutely.
With philosophy.
The two Blade Runner movies are fantastic. Obviously the originals, but like I really loved the new one too. I thought they did an excellent job with that. It's really hard to do like a sequel, like 30 something years later to like, a bona fide classic.
Yeah, we've seen how that fails.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones, Crystal Skull, Star Wars.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know what that was. A weird coughing fit I just
that was weird. It's a good thing Lucasfilm had nothing to do with Blade Runner. I'll just say that. So yeah, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think it's not going to be really related to the plot of Blade Runner. It's kind of using the setting.
It's one of those things that it's in universe.
Yeah.
Like Harrison Ford's not doing a voice in this as far as I know.
We're going to be getting two big kind of anime cyberpunk aesthetic shows because we have that, but we also have the cyberpunk series that's coming later. There was no trailer at Comic-Con for this to Netflix that was in development, like this was announced before all the problems problems with Cyberpunk, but it's still being plugged away at. So we're going to have a few like kind of cool Cyberpunk aesthetic shows, like animated shows coming up. So
Right.
I love Cyberpunk aesthetics, so that'll be cool to see both of them. I'm looking forward to it. Next up, we have Dune. So Dune released a second trailer just before Comic-Con. I've never read Dune. I've never watched the original movie.
I'm not familiar with Dune.
I didn't watch the miniseries.
I'm not familiar with Dune much at all. Yeah, I haven't consumed any Dune content.
I can tell you I'm excited for Dune.
It looks good.
The trailer looks great. You mentioned the Blade Runner sequel being done really well. Same director.
Yeah, it's same director. Yep. I know like people have big expectations on this. It's interesting looking at this stuff without like expectations, like those fan expectations. So I guess like it'll be interesting to watch this and like see my reactions versus like reactions of people who are like hardcore fans of the books or even the original. I know the original Dune film was done by David Lynch with Kyle MacLachlan in the lead. The consensus is even as talented as David Lynch is, like he couldn't fully do it justice.
He's not the kind of guy you bring on to adapt something.
Right.
He's got his own vision.
Yeah, he's got his own vision.
If you want a faithful adaptation, you do not hire David Lynch.
Right.
That's not kind of the right choice for that. You know, David Lynch makes great David Lynch projects.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say. Like, my knowledge of Dune is basically some of the famous quotes from it, like fear is the mind killer, things like that are like, you know, I know those just from, you know, absorbing them through the culture.
Right, yeah.
Around it. I know it's considered like kind of the original like space opera, like before Star Wars and all that, like the original books, you know, where like the original space opera, like kind of everything was based on, like all those other space opera stuff kind of borrowed heavily from, you know?
Yeah, although I don't know if George Lucas ever stated Dune as an influence on his work.
I think he did. I think he cited Dune and then he cited some of the pulp.
Well, he talked about
Kurosawa and
he talked about Kurosawa. He talked about Buck Rogers, the old sci-fi serials. Lucas talked a lot about those as influences.
Mm-hmm. I think he mentioned Dune too, but I can't, you know, be sure on that.
No, it doesn't matter. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, moving on. So I'm going to skip ahead in the show notes a little bit here just because we got something else Dune related, which is that there's going to be a prequel series coming to HBO Max called Dune the Sisterhood. This is an adaptation of an existing novel, so not like...
Right. So what HBO is doing now is they got HBO Max, so HBO now, it seems to be like their strategy is whenever they have like a big tentpole film coming out, they want to supplement it with something on HBO Max so that people like who might be interested in the film would go check out this related material that's only airing on the streaming service. That seems to be a new strategy.
But it seems to have come about kind of organically. It's weird because like, for instance, the other big one you can draw a comparison to this with is Peacemaker, which is like a spin-off of the Suicide Squad movie that James Gunn is doing that's coming out soon, is going to have a series called Peacemaker that follows that character. But that series came about basically because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because James Gunn really was bored and had nothing to do and he just wrote a series and then pitched it to HBO Max. And so it wasn't like a strategic thing that they asked him to do. It's just like, it kind of just came about organically.
Yeah, it kind of came, but now it seems to be they're doing it very deliberately.
Yeah. I think HBO saw that, liked the idea of it, and now it's become a thing.
They also have plans to do like a big screen Black Superman with J.J. Abrams and Ta-Nehisi Coates. Hope I didn't butcher that. And, you know, they're planning to do like a major tentpole film around that, but now they're also developing the separate Michael B. Jordan Black Superman for HBO Max, centering on Val-Zod. Again, that just seems to be a companion to what they're doing on the big screen.
Yeah, I think it came about organically, and then they liked it so much that now it's become a strategy.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, you know, it's like that's kind of their new move forward with that. I mean, there's not much, neither of us, like, as we said with Dune, we don't really know much about Dune. What we can can say is that the showrunner for this Dune series is Diane Ademujan, who did The Haunting of Bly Manor, which was the second season of The Haunting on Netflix, where, you know, those were both very highly rated, both seasons, which were separate stories. It's like an anthology series. But yeah, it's focusing on a existing book. So this isn't them just like making up their own material that fell out a prequel. There was an existing novel that followed the story, and that's what they're doing. It's based on. So that kind of means it's probably going to be better than what people are probably expecting.
And basically, HBO Max, they want to do 10 exclusive films that are exclusive to the streaming service. So not
that's separate from these, because these are TV series that we've mentioned so far.
Yeah, that's true. These are supposed to be series. I don't think we have any indication or idea of like what these 10 films are supposed to be, just that they want to do 10 films.
So here's the thing. HBO Max, you know, kind of blew everybody's minds last year when they announced that they were going to be doing day and date releases in the movie theater, in the movie theater and on HBO Max for all of their movies in 2021. And that's what's been going on for a while now. The Suicide Squad's going to come out that way. Dune's going to come out that way.
They want to be really aggressive with they're being really aggressive with the service.
They got a lot of pushback against them on it. The guy that kind of came up with that strategy, I think, is like gone now.
Yeah, he's gone.
So they're not doing that again. They're not going to keep doing that in 2022. This is completely different. This is they in the same way that Netflix has movies, you know?
Yeah, they changed the strategy. They're still being really aggressive, but they changed the strategy because they know, like, doing what they were doing pissed off the movie theaters, and they don't want to do that. But they still want to give people exciting reasons to subscribe to the service. Mm-hmm. And so, they're going to do exclusive films for the service, same way Netflix does films for Netflix.
I think it's kind of a modification of their existing kind of strategy that they've had for a couple of years now, and that kind of all movie studios have had for a while now. Because a lot of, like, for example, when you see like original movies that are coming not to theaters but straight to like Netflix or Amazon Prime, those usually aren't being made by Netflix studios. They're not like created and funded by Netflix. They're usually purchased by Netflix from other productions. Basically, it's like a production company made a movie, decided it doesn't fit within their schedule, and then shopped it around to sell it. And Netflix and Amazon and some other companies bought those movies that were made to be theatrical releases, but that they just decided, not necessarily because they're not good enough, but just they don't fit their lineup. They're like, okay, this doesn't make sense for us. And instead of just like shelving it indefinitely or forcing it out in a way where it's just going to die at the box office, they're like, well, let's just sell it to Netflix or sell it to Amazon or something. And this has been a strategy they've had for, I don't know, like the last like 8 years maybe, since like you started seeing like these big original movies from like Netflix and stuff. They're usually not from Netflix. They're usually like other studios that made them, and then Netflix bought it. And so this seems to be kind of like almost them doing that, but then saying, well, we don't have to sell it to Netflix. We can just put it on our service. I think that this is a lot of what this is going to end up being, is it's not going to be like these big movies that are planned from the beginning to be HBO Max exclusives, but they're movies that were in development that they've then decided, this isn't going to fit our schedule. Let's make it an HBO Max exclusive.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So that's likely what this is going to be. Our next story, Jordan Peele announced his next movie. They showed a poster. It's got the same actor from Get Out, and it's also got Glenn from The Walking Dead.
It's got Mark from Invincible.
Yeah, another way to say it. Best title for a horror movie ever.
Yeah. It's Nope. It's actually, I think I told you this too. It's the first time I actually laughed at a movie title. This is the first time a movie title has actually made me laugh.
And it looks like a spoof. Like, it looks like something that you would see like somebody would make on like, Reddit or something.
But Jordan, it's unlikely it's going to be a spoof.
No.
Because he doesn't do spoof.
I mean, it looks like a spoof poster.
Right.
Not like a spoof project, but it looks like somebody was to do a joke one
of those joke poster things where somebody takes a movie poster and they change the name of the movie to like something funny.
Yeah. That's what this looks. That's what I'm saying. It reminded me of, and that's why it's so great. It's not going to be a spoof. It's going to be a satire, I think, in the same way that like Get Out and Us were satires.
It'll definitely be that style.
It'll be a satirical horror film that has real issues.
Again, the The poster is really vague. The title itself is vague. So no details. I'm just looking forward to it because, yeah, it's Jordan Peele and the title made me laugh. And
the title's great, you know.
That's always a good sign.
Yeah. Next story, we mentioned Invincible. Well, Invincible's going to be getting a live action movie. This was kind of known about, but I think people just kind of assumed it wasn't going to happen anymore.
Well, Robert Kirkman says it's still in early development. So I think it's more accurate to say, like, he's working on a live action Invincible. It doesn't look like anybody's officially greenlit it. Like, I'm not seeing any announcement of, like, a studio picking it up or anything.
Well, they said it's going to be the same people that were involved in the animated series, being Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg.
Yeah, well, that's the production company.
Yeah.
That's the production, like, yeah, they're working on it, but, I mean, it's not really a go until, like, a studio picks it up. So
he seems pretty confident, though. Robert Kirkman seemed confident this was going to happen.
Yeah.
What's interesting here is that, you know, this isn't going to relate to the series, except that they have the same source material.
Right.
They're actually going to develop this to be a bit different than they ended up doing with the series.
Which
so
they
that
should.
It kind of stands on its own a little bit more.
Which they should.
But what's interesting is that they're doing this with the same people that are doing the series. So it's just weird. I don't know if I've ever seen something like this before, where at the same time they developed a TV series adapting the material and a movie adapting the material with the same people adapting both of them. Like, this is kind of weird. Like, I don't think I've ever seen something like this before.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, if it happens. This sounds like it's in a stage where, like, anything can happen still. But if this happens, it'll be interesting to see how it comes out.
Yeah.
You know what'd be really funny? If they got, like, the voice actors to do the roles in live action. So they literally got Steven Yeun.
Steven Yeun's playing a teenager.
To play a teenager.
Yeah, that would be kind of funny.
But yeah.
And our last story is just a kind of quick one, and that's Wheel of Time, which has been in development at Amazon for a while. It's a very famous fantasy book series that had an interesting story in which the author died before the book series was completed, and they brought in another author to complete the series. It's one of those kind of weird things where you always wonder, like, when people, like, wonder, is George R. R. Martin going to die before he gets Game of Thrones out there, you know? Before he finishes the book series. Well, this is kind of like this situation happened. This author died, and another author had to finish his work. They've been adapting it on Amazon, who are kind of all in on big fantasy properties, because they're also doing the Lord of the Rings series, and then they have this Wheel of Time series. Both of them have pretty big budgets too.
They want that Game of Thrones money, like, really badly.
So while Lord of the Rings is the big boy of the two, Wheel of Time also has a really large budget. This is like a big project. Don't dismiss this as like Shannara Chronicles or something. This is this is a big budget project.
Yeah, Amazon is putting money into this too.
Yeah, this is coming a lot sooner than I thought. It's November of this year. They announced that release date and they showed a poster for it. I really have no idea what the poster means, what anything on the poster means, because I've never read the books. I just know but many people consider this like the best fantasy book series ever. You know, this is like a really extremely popular fantasy book series. So yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of check that out, because I don't have the patience to read the books. I've heard the books are particularly dense and hard to get into initially, that there's so much detail. It's one of those series where there's just so much detail that you start to get bored, but like the story is really good. It's just too much detail. And so it'll be really cool to see how that translates as a TV series.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so that is our last story from Comic-Con, and that ends our podcast. So thank you everybody for listening. If you want to send us feedback, please do. You can leave feedback on the YouTube video for this. You can leave feedback on the SoundCloud page. You can leave feedback directly to us by, contacting us on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. Will is at Voxel Hero. So you can check out either of those and contact us directly and, say, hey, what's up? I think you guys suck and you should quit. You can do that.
Yeah. Okay. okay.
Or you can send positive feedback, or as I said last week, you could just send us like, just kind of like middle of the road generic feedback, like this was a podcast. This was in fact a podcast that I listened to. That's my favorite kind of feedback. So, we love feedback. Send it to us if you have any. And if you want us to read something on the air related to something that we're talking about or that we have talked about, you can do that too. Thank you everybody for listening to this week's podcast. That's it. So I guess we're not here to kill chaos anymore.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Little Screen. Visit our website at thetotoscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.